would love for you to talk about intuition a little bit. I know you and I talked about that a lot on our first call. What does intuition mean to you? And then how do you allow it to work in your life?
So it's interesting because I come out of this sort of this profession that is all about sort of proof and fact, right?
Yeah.
And intuition means to me that inner knowing that we all have, and we do all have it, but we often get disconnected from it
Yeah.
because we live in a world. It's not just lawyers who are told we have to be able to explain our decisions, right? Um, and while I think there are some circumstances where professionally you still might need to then come up with the explanations. I was just working with a client recently, and we were talking about how to lean more strongly into the very strong gut instinct that she has. And she's like, yeah, but I still am going to have to come up with the rationale. And I'm like, cool, but that doesn't mean that you can't first decide with your gut and then go looking for the supporting cast, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, intuition means like for me personally in my life, it means really listening to my gut response to things and trusting it. And when it comes to my personal decisions, not needing to explain it. If it feels like a
Yes.
yes, it's a yes. If it feels like a no, it's a no. And if I'm not sure, it's a not right now, come back and ask later. And I don't need to tell you, like, in my journey, especially in developing sort of my skills as a coach, I have pursued some things that have made not a lot of logical sense, but it always makes sense in the end. And so I've just learned to trust the yes and follow it.
That's great. I like that you're allowing your clients to say no without explaining.
And I think like at this point, I've really like strongly leaned into listening to my gut. And like my family knows they aren't going to get I mean, sometimes they no, or yeah, we're doing that. And they're not going to get a long explanation of like why it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. Cause it's not that it's wrong. It's just, I know it's not for me right now.
Yeah, definitely. That's so cool. I have, so many females in general who struggle in one way or another, in and amongst the her version group, and in amongst my clients. And one of the struggles that I see often is just the fact of knowing, like, okay, I know I don't like the position that I'm in my career. I know that. Well, now what? Like,
Yep.
what are the steps? Like, I don't even know what to do first. Can you give the examples that you used in your journey as far as like the first steps that you took towards, really living into or stepping into your authentic, journey of where you are now?
Sure. Actually, what I'd rather do, because I think I've learned some things since I've been through it
Yeah.
that actually help. And so I want to talk about happiness, and some of the research around happiness first. And so when we're unhappy or we're feeling stuck, we have this notion, or most of us have this notion, that what needs to change is our circumstances. So our job, our partnership, um, our house, our health, our wealth. But the research says actually that those things are only responsible for 10% of our happiness.
Okay.
So doesn't mean that they can't have an impact on our happiness, but it means that it is not how we solve unhappiness. We don't start there.
Okay.
The remaining 90% is split as follows. 50% is related to our genetic set point, and that's genetic and epigenetic, and I'm not going to spend a bunch of time there. Where I think the magic happens is the remaining 40%, which comes from our daily intentional beliefs and behaviors. And so when a client comes to me and says, hey, I know I don't want to stay here, but I don't know where I want to go, the first thing that I like to work on is, how do we get as happy as we can be where you are today?
Okay. Yeah.
The reason being that from a platform of that happier place, it is easier to build or architect your happiness versus escaping your unhappiness by switching some circumstance.
Wow. Okay.
So that is not something that I did, but if I could go back, I would, right? It's like, how do I get as
Beautiful.
settled in myself where I am today so that I can really instead of just solving one variable in the equation, I can solve the whole equation with my next move, right?
Awesome.
So that's the first step. And then kind of that can be happening in parallel with some work around taking stock of your current situation, fully understanding what is taking your time, your energy, and your resources in your life today. And when I say take stock, I mean literally write the inventory. Get a big fat piece of paper or a bunch of Post-it notes or some, a big document on your computer, and like put it all down so that you can see it. Get it out of your head onto a piece of paper. Everything that is taking your time, energy, and resources. And when you think you're done, you're not. So ask yourself, what haven't I written down? What else is keeping me up at night? What else am I worried about? All of it. I want you to ask yourself that a handful of times, because often we like resist capturing the things that are really under the surface and bothering us.
Wow. Okay. So write down on a piece of paper everything that's costing
That's
us
taking
our
your time, your energy, and your resources.
Wow. Okay.
And
That's
you don't have to
great.
get like granular. Like it doesn't have to be like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like I'll put it in the grocery context. Like you could just say like, I have to spend money on food. You don't have to be like, I have to buy cheese and lettuce and, like,
Okay.
it doesn't have to be that deep.
I
Right.
understand. Thank you. Yeah.
But I think it's the notion of trying to capture where all the outputs are going.
Okay.
And the one that gets missed often when we sit down to do this, or, when I see other people doing it, we focus a lot on time, but the energy is a big one.
Okay.
What we're worrying about, what we're thinking about, what we're spending that emotional energy on can be a really big drain. And so getting that on the piece of paper too is important.
Wow. Okay. That's absolutely phenomenal. And then that gives them a visual.
It gives you a visual. Exactly. And every person, so I've had some people resist this exercise. And in particular, I've had lawyers resist this exercise because they say, Becky, I'm already billing my time. I know how I'm spending my time. I'm like, cool, do it anyway.
Wow.
And then they come back and they're like, you know what I realized? I realized that I'm taking a break every hour. Good. Breaks are great. But in that break, I'm mindlessly scrolling the internet.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you've just found potentially an hour to an hour and a half a day that you can redirect towards that 40% of the pie. What are some intentional behaviors that you could engage in that might bring you more happiness during that time instead of just mindlessly doing anything?
Absolutely. That's phenomenal. I love that. So cool. So cool. I want to ask, with all this talk of happiness, what does happiness mean to you?
So there's two ways that I think about happiness. The first is sort of the experience of happiness, meaning what does it mean? Like, am I happy? Am I joyful? Am I engaged? Am I content? Right? The other thing that I like to think about is, what does it mean to live happy? And to live happy, in my definition, means to have, on balance, more positive emotional experiences than tough ones. And that's not possible in every second or every day or even every month of our lives, right? Like we go through periods where the tough stuff outweighs the good stuff.
Yeah.
But if we can aim for living in a way that we are living happy, we build resilience so that when we have those periods, we're better able to weather them. And so for me, living happy is about like choosing to not ignore the negative, but to find ways to inject more positive emotional experiences into our lives. And that is on the highest level, that's by doing things that matter to us. On the most granular level, it's about knowing the little things that we can inject to make us happy on a daily basis. So for example, I love the sun on my face.
Okay.
I can go outside any day that the sun is shining and get the sun on my face.
Yeah.
I have to remember to do it though, right?
Yes.
And I have to know that that is one of the things. And if you had asked me 2 years ago what makes me happy, I would not have had that granular level of detail. I would have said things like time with my family and being on vacation. And so the key is to know those big things, but then to dig a little deeper. And so I'll use the vacation one as an example. Well, what is it about vacation that you enjoy? Well, I like not having all the responsibilities of home. I like being at the beach. Well, why do you like being at the beach? I like being at the beach because I can be in the sun. oh, well, now I can take that being in the sun and put it in my day anytime.
Wow. Absolutely. So easy, yet so difficult.
Well, yet we don't would like where do we learn to do that, right? It's not,
Yeah.
it gets missed. And I think then we get this idea of like, okay, well, I have to go on vacation to be happy, but I can't go on vacation all the time. And so like, how do I solve that?
Yes, absolutely. What a little hack that is too.
Yeah,
What a
it's one of
little
my
hack.
favorites.
Yes, yes. And when you think about that, that is the thing that people think about when they go on vacation is to just lay out in the sun. But
It's
you
for, go
you
ahead.
can literally on your lunch break at work go out and sit, with your feet in the sun if you don't want to get all, sweaty or necessarily whatever while you're eating a sandwich or
That's right.
something.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. No, and I think it's about knowing those things about yourself. Like I have a person that I was doing this exercise with, and for them it wasn't the sun, it was the quiet time with their thoughts. And I'm like, well,
Beautiful.
cool. How can you carve that out in your life today? And the key is that you're carving it out with the intention of savoring and enjoying it. Because we can, like you might be somebody who eats lunch outside, but if you're not then remembering that, oh, this is like happiness gold. Let me enjoy
Yes.
it. Let me appreciate it. Let me savor it. Like you can mindlessly eat the chocolate or you can be like chocolate, yum, right? So it's the same idea.
Absolutely. Yes. And I love that that analogy of the chocolate. My fiance and I get into it sometimes because he's a sweet eater and he'll sit down with chocolate or Oreos or whatever it is and instead of eating 2 or 3, he'll have like 16. And I'm like, "Did you even enjoy that?" Like you're just like mindlessly just eat. Granted, he's like super thin and he works out and whatever.
He
But I'm just
can,
saying,
yeah.
like, you're not enjoying that food at all. You're just mindlessly, just as fast as you can, shoveling it into your mouth versus what you're saying with, like, okay, I love Oreos so much. Let me sit with 4 of them and really enjoy that.
Or with 16 of them. But like if you're gonna do it, you may
Let's
as
not
well
say
squeeze
that.
the well, but my point is you may as well squeeze the juice out, right? Like you may as well juice the happiness. I
Yes.
was talking to a client about just this stuff recently, and she, one of the things on her list was like, I really love time with my dog. And I'm like, well, cool. How can you spend more time with your dog? And she's like, well, I already walk him 3 times a day. And like, we have the most fun. And I'm like, well, but are you actually like enjoying those walks? Are
Wow.
you present in those walks? Are you
Yeah.
treating those as an opportunity like to get some happiness juice? Or are you walking the dog while you're on a phone call and walking the dog while you're like scrolling whatever and walking we can
Wow.
choose how we show up to these things too, and that can make a big difference.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.